It's now 72 days since Australia's worst terror attack, when 15 innocent people were slaughtered and dozens more were injured at a Hanukkah event at Bondi Beach. This was the manifestation, according to police statements, allegations and charges, a manifestation of vile anti-Semitism born from Islamist extremism. Today, a federal royal commission into anti-Semitism began its work with a public hearing outlining its plans. Initially strongly resisted by Anthony Albanese, the commission was called after weeks of public pressure on the Prime Minister. The Royal Commission aims to report by December the 14th this year, the first anniversary of the Bondi massacre. Here's the counsel assisting today.
A large part of the work of this commission will be to present evidence to allow a broader understanding of the scourge of anti-Semitism, its nature and prevalence throughout Australian society, and its impact on the lives of fellow Australians. Through that understanding, there may be opportunities to improve.
The Commissioner, former High Court Judge Virginia Bell, warned that the Commission will avoid examining the actual alleged criminal acts at Bondi, because while one of the gunmen, Sajid Akram, was killed by police on the day, his son Naveed, who was also shot, survived and is in custody awaiting murder and terrorism charges. The Royal Commission doesn't want to prejudice those proceedings. The Commissioner will meet with surviving victims and the families of victims to further explain this reasoning, while the Commission's broader purpose, of course, will continue.
Hopefully address the real issue, which is anti-Semitism, and the change in Australia as to why Australian Jews have all of a sudden, in the last 2 years, had to fear for our safety.
As you know, this is the critical point that I and others have focused on for more than 2 years in the lead-up to the Bondi attack. We pointed to rampant anti-Semitism and hate preaching from Islamist extremists that flashed to the surface immediately after the Hamas terrorist atrocities in southern Israel on October the 7th, 2023. And they just have not stopped. Many of us were calling for stronger action from the government from the very start. We were calling for stronger leadership from the government and law enforcement authorities to stamp out anti-Semitism, to quell the demonisation of Israel and to curb Islamist extremism. Instead, the government appointed envoys for anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. It constantly criticised Israel and it recognised the non-existent state of Palestine, a decision that won praise from the bloodthirsty Islamist extremists of Hamas. So a key question for the Royal Commission must be whether the government should have done more, which is what Andrew Clennell put to the Prime Minister on the weekend.
Well, we'll have a Royal Commission, Andrew. But what we know already is that this was a father and son acting in the equivalence of a lone wolf, in this case, people having a conversation over the kitchen table. They hired a place in Campsie so that they could engage separate from the community in which they lived. They went and hired a place down in the Southern Highlands where they trained themselves. They were radicalised online. It is very difficult, as ASIO have said, to intervene where there's no electronic trail, where there's no warning signs of meetings and engagement.
They went to the Philippines, right? They went to the Philippines and he'd previously be on a watch list. Does any of that say to you ASIO might have failed here?
Listen, Andrew, what's appropriate is that the Royal Commission be allowed to do its job, and they will do their job.
We'll see. But when you listen to Albanese and his Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke speak on these issues, the term you will almost never hear is Islamist extremism or radical Islam. They defer instead to the generic and, in my view, deceptive broader term of anti-Semitism. Now, sure, there are different forms of anti-Semitism and they all need to be tackled, including the obscene rise of neo-Nazi thugs. But the serious threat across the world in recent decades, the ideology that has cost so many lives in Israel, in the wider Middle East, in Southeast Asia, across Europe and the UK and in the Americas is Islamist extremism. We all know that. And our Prime Minister and his ministers won't mention its name. It is the deadly threat in this country whose name the government dares not speak. Nor is Islamist extremism mentioned in the terms of reference for the Royal Commission. It mentions Jewish Australians, the Jewish community and Jewish places of worship and facilities, but nary a mention of the clearest and most present threat against them, Islamist extremism. The Commission prefers to speak about religious extremism.
It requires the Commission to investigate the nature and prevalence of anti-Semitism in institutions and society by examining its key drivers in Australia, including religious and ideologically motivated extremism and radicalisation.
Like the politicians, they are oh so coy, aren't they? Let me give you the strong tip. They are not going to focus on extreme Catholicism or radical Buddhists or ideologically motivated Methodists. This avoidance of even mentioning the main problem, the main ideological driver of violence against Jews and against all victims of terrorism in Western liberal democracies, well, it's deeply worrying. I've spoken about this for almost 2 decades. I've called it jihad denialism. And my argument is that you can't confront a dire threat if you're too timid even to say it out loud. We've had the Bali bombings. We've had the Lint Cafe siege. We've had terrorist killings at Parramatta. And we've had them in the suburbs of Melbourne. And we've had large-scale Islamist terrorist plots thwarted on our shores. And guess what? While our political, cultural, law enforcement and media elites have tried to skirt around the issue of Islamist extremism for the past 2 decades or more, it's only gotten worse. Now, anyone can make a submission to the Royal Commission via its website, and I urge anyone with experience or insights into these issues to do that. Don't let them whitewash what has been the slow-motion train wreck of escalating Islamist extremism in this country, especially over the past 2 years and 4 months. Finally, we need to tackle it.